but we can go ahead and get started. We'll have a few more joining us as we move on. But today's topic is about restroom care, and restroom care goes smart. Increase efficiency, improve hygiene, and enhance user experience. And we have three expert panelists, and we'll introduce them in a moment. But I'll tell you this, that among the three, we have a lot of experience. And whether we talk about the Internet of Things, touchless technology, or productivity issues, staffing, dealing with issues in restroom care, maybe it's grout or odors you're trying to deal with, we'll be able to answer those questions. So we have a prepared presentation, but we also want to spend time at the end for some questions. So as we go through this, think of what questions you would like to ask. And I'll mention how to do that in a moment, but have that in mind. We want to answer your toughest questions as we go through this. We want to thank Aspire and Sofidel for their sponsorship. We will have two commercials to play from our sponsors today during our webinar. So let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. We see, I'm Jeff Cross, your moderator. I'm the media director with ISSA, and one of the brands under ISSA Media is Cleaning and Maintenance Management Magazine. Many of you, if not all of you, received that, whether it's digital format or printed, but you can go to cmmonline.com and find the subscribe option there and get your copy of the magazine when it's released. So if you don't receive it, subscribe today and stay informed on what's happening in the industry. Martha Schmidt is our ISSA virtual events producer, so she'll be running things behind the scene. And if you have any issues, you can message her privately or put it out there for us all to see. It's okay to do that too. And Kathleen Misovic is our CMM managing editor. She'll be looking over the questions you put in and providing those for us at the end of our webinar today. So stick around for the whole hour and we'll answer your questions then. Some housekeeping rules. I like to say there's really none because you're muted. You can make noise at your end, but use the Q&A and chat feature to comment and share your thoughts. We will have a few chat questions and we'll ask you to put in some thoughts there, but interact with our presenters. They're going to be watching the chat as well and commenting on what you say. So you can be assured of that. There's a question that we're going to get from some of you is, when do I get a copy of this? It takes a couple of days to take it from here to our website, but you'll get an email with a link to this recording. So you'll get that in a couple of days. It will be provided to you and you can share it with those on your team or anyone else. It'll be made public for you to use. Want everyone to have the opportunity to look at ISSA as an option for a trade association. So join the ISSA family. Many of our attendees here are part of ISSA right now, but if you're not, visit issa.com, click on the member option, or email membership@issa.com, and we can set up a meeting or answer your questions that way as well. We have our first sponsor message. Let's watch this, and then we'll get into our program.
The nice thing about Aspire is it gives you simple, easy to read optics of your financial position and where you're headed.
Aspire allows us to track materials, track our costs.
Our crews are clocking in geofence to that site so we can prove that they are there.
Payroll has been ridiculously more efficient.
Aspire is the best holistic solution on the market.
Our profitability has increased tremendously.
Aspire gives us confidence to continue to grow.
And we thank Aspire for their sponsorship. Our panelists today, you can see them on screen. We're like about this big on your screen, but they're sitting there ready to comment on these slides we have for you. Carl Kyle is the Associate Vice President at Core America. Carl, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
And Daryl Hicks is the owner of Safe, Clean, and Disinfected. Daryl, I know we go way back on LinkedIn at least.
Yeah, good to be here and share the panel with these professionals in the business, and look forward to the conversation today.
And that's what we want to have, a conversation. Rosario is actually his last name, but he says all his friends call him Rosario. So I guess we're all friends, Rosario?
Yes, we're all friends.
All right. Now, before we get started, I don't know, did you guys bring your tools? No?
I did not.
Okay, well, I brought my restroom cleaning tools. Maybe we need more than that, right?
Mine's are all automated.
That's a good thing. Yeah, mine are antiques. So we are going to talk about tools of the trade and all the things we need. So let's go ahead and get started with our first chat question. What we want everyone to do is use the chat, tell us this, how long you've been in the cleaning industry, and what your role is. This way, our presenters can kind of take the temperature of our audience today and see, are you a facility manager? Are you a custodian? Do you run a cleaning company? Do you own a building service contracting company? And we don't have to do that right this minute, but give some thought to putting that in the chat as we go through our presentation. So I see we have some experience. Jeanette has 32 years, 20, 25, 18. I'm seeing a lot of experience and a couple of newer ones to the industry, 2 to 3 years. A lot of managers. We have a microbiologist. I guess that'll keep us on our toes. So 15 years, 6 years. So lots of good experience. And the chat is going quickly because we got a lot of folks on here today. So that helps us. You know, we have a lot of experience. We'd love to hear your thoughts and use the chat feature to share those as we go through our presentation. So thank you for engaging on our first chat question. So I thought we'd start with this, with our panelists. Let's talk about some restroom pain points that they see, some of the biggest challenges facing the industry when it comes to public restrooms. And Rosario, I'm going to start with you. Rosario runs a facility. He's our end user expert today. So in you run a university?
Yes, Fairfield University in Connecticut.
All right. What's most challenging to you guys?
There's a number of things. One of the ones that stand out the most is like during orientation and open house, we get a lot of high foot traffic in the public restrooms. Also, recently we've experienced some vandalism with people breaking the fixtures or wanting to tag up their graffiti name on the walls while they're standing in front of the urinal. People not using the trash cans correctly, throwing all the paper on the floor.
Sounds like some normal ones. The paper on the floor, like when people are leaving through a doorway?
Right, through the doorway. Yeah. I like to keep the trash can by the door so that when you open the door with the tissue, you can just toss the used tissue into the trash can, but somehow there's an invisible net there that just pops it out onto the floor.
I hear you. So all of you folks on our webinar, Rosario mentioned graffiti, and I just wonder if there's some unique ideas on how to prevent that from happening or clean up tips. So maybe we'll talk about that as we go through, but share some thoughts in the chat there. Daryl, let's go to you. What do you see as some of the big issues facing the industry?
Well, I think that people are concerned about germs in bathrooms, and as we get back to work and returning to work, that's the thing that I think that the workers are looking for. Is it safe to go back to work? They've been working in their cocoon for these past 3 years, and so they and the public are concerned about the cleanliness, and most people associate cleanliness with smells. And so if those smells are offensive, there's probably a reason for that. And one of the things that I hate is the cherry bomb, in the restrooms. When I get to the restroom and 6 feet away, I can smell the cherry bomb. I expect that the bathroom is not going to be cleaned well because they're trying to cover up their lack of cleanliness and detailed cleanliness, deep cleaning, with the cherry bomb. And no offense to the cherry bomb purveyors, but I think that we need to, clean should have no odors. Safe and clean should have no odors.
Agreed. I see that too. Carl, what do you think?
Well, I think, let's just back up into the topic itself, right? Restrooms aren't the largest space in our facilities, but our complaints or the complaints we receive are driven by this space. Outside of our entrances and lobbies, that is our first impression of a building, is what does the restroom look like? What does it smell like? To Daryl's point. And that is very important, looking at our restrooms and those pain points that go along with them, because that drives the perception of our building. And again, to Daryl's point, as people are coming back into that building, you have that anxiety from the occupants, because now they're in a space that they don't have control over. And so they're wondering about germs. How is this being treated? We talk about pre-COVID and we think about cleaning in general, where a lot of different areas or clients would want to just see the building clean and not even see so much of the operators or the technicians or the staff doing the job. Now it's more of, I want to see this person, put them in a brightly colored vest. I want to see what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it. And they want to have a level of transparency into the cleaning operation that we really haven't seen before.
Good points. I will add one thought, and it'll lead into our next slide, but it's about supplies. When you all these automatic dispensers and technology, sometimes you find that they don't work or they're out. And you got to wonder, is it a staffing issue? Is it a technology issue? Or just what it is, like a global issue? The Internet of Things might help with some of that. And for those not aware or familiar with this, IoT is technology that ties everything together. And you think about being notified if you're running out of supplies or something's happening. You know, it's that communication factor that matters. Now, Carl, we're going to start with you on this one, because I know that this is a big part of your consulting business and work, talking about Internet of Things and restrooms. So can you describe what that looks like from your perspective and what you deal with clients with?
Sure. I would say the first thing you want to do when we talk about Internet of Things is the application, right? You want to have the right use case. All this technology exists, and I know we're specifically talking about restrooms, but even going outside of the restrooms, any type of technology has to be properly applied to that use case. In a lot of education or higher ed, you may have certain buildings that are very good for this application, not all your buildings. In airports or transportation, more widespread. High use areas, very widespread. The first thing we always talk to our clients about and making sure they look at is, do you have the proper process, staff, and logistical support before you implement these solutions? Because like you said before, Jeff, you have all this automated machinery, all these automated dispensers, and is it the technology? Is it the staff? Well, if they're not properly trained, or if you don't have the proper logistics behind them to make sure they're refilled or staffed to receive those notifications, because again, you get a lot of notifications coming off of this technology. The technology is not really that useful to you. If you only have a few team members who understand it and can work with it, that also might not be very well, because you don't have the proper support. And also making sure you have the right operators. And when I say operators, I'm talking about management and supervisors who buy into this technology as a good solution. They need to be able to then communicate that to staff and show them what these solutions are and how they work properly. I would also add that before you look at these solutions, these don't solve some fundamental things that you should look at in your program, right? Are you properly workloaded for the right amount of staff? Do you have the proper training? Do you have the proper equipment? Is your program standardized in how you're doing things? And once you answer those questions, then implementing these solutions go a lot smoother, I would say.
Good information. Thank you for sharing that. And Daryl, let's go to you. When you talk to clients and you're helping them with your work, how often does this come up in conversation?
Well, I think that, with my experience and what I hear from people, a lot of it deals with frequency and the timing of the day that those restrooms are cleaned. But I would build into my duty list, that you clean it once and you police it like 2 or 3 times a day, that especially those high usage areas, to go back and, check things and restock or pick up the paper towels off the floor. But, to always present a welcoming environment in those restrooms. But, I think that the frequency of cleaning and getting it before the high usage starts, and then at the end of the high usage, I think the Internet of Things may be able to track, what times of the day are those restrooms really being hard hit with traffic. And if they're in the main lobby of the building, those are going to be the ones that get the highest usage. But we can track that with with traffic counters or whatever, but I think that we have the ability, I think with a lot of the dispensers to dispense them hands-free, and that's important, but at the same time, we need to be measuring, when those batteries are, there ought to be some sort of system that is checking if they're battery powered, that someone is actually looking at that. And that was, to your point, that was one of my biggest complaints was, yeah, there's a hand sanitizer there, but it doesn't work because the batteries are dead, So you try to make a good impression and you do your best to provide those things, and then it gets killed by the perception that we're not really managing things well.
I'll say that most often I see this in like busy airports where you're at a sink and everything's automated and you have to move from one sink to the next until you find the one that's going to give you what you need. Frustrating, but just what we're dealing with. And we've come a long ways, but maybe a long way still to go. Rosario, I know a lot of the technology available is expensive and it's some of these things on your wish list, but what do you think about this topic?
I think that in the context of public restrooms, and the Internet of Things, it could refer to the integration of smart devices and sensors and that are connected to the internet and collect and exchange data, which enable various functionalities to enhance the restroom's efficiency, the user's experience, and maintenance. I don't know if it was Darryl that mentioned the occupancy monitoring, where when is the busiest time. But I think it's great to try to minimize the amount of time that an actual custodian has to go and check, go back and forth, wasting time, as opposed to getting an alert on your smartphone or a notification or an email and say, hey, I'm running low on bathroom tissue, or there's no soap in store 1, so that you can dispatch someone out to get these things done before they become a complaint. Not only that, but we have now where they're like actually QR codes by the bathroom, which allows the end user to say, hey, this bathroom is bad, or it looks great, or whatever, just to get that user feedback. I know in healthcare we used to have these Press Ganey scores, and everything was you were scrolled on everything. So no longer in healthcare facilities.
No, but good point about the QR code. That's easy technology to implement. It's something anyone could probably do and get some valuable information when they do that. Let's move to our next point. And Carl, I'm going to come back to you because I know I was working with you on some of these points. When you think about the Internet of Things and the cost and maybe the challenge of onboarding some of that, the questions of when we should do it, where and how come up. So I'm going to let you speak on that. And then if Rosario or Darryl want to add to that, they can.
Sure. And I just want to add one little point to what we just finished talking about.
Sure.
When we talk about, all this data coming in, you need someone to analyze this data to then readjust your program. We're getting more and more data from all these different sensors. And we're going from being preventative and reactive to now being predictive, right? We can use this data to be predictive in our schedules. We know at this time, more people are coming in. We can readjust our rounds for our restrooms. Or we know this restroom doesn't get this much attention. Well, let's move these resources now. We can really pivot and readjust our resources surgically more so than before. Before we're just being preventative. Everyone goes into every single restroom, one size fits all. We'll do 2 rounds everywhere as if all things are equal. But now we have data that can drive us in the right direction as to where we need to move our resources. In terms of implementing when, where, and how, I would say you want to do pilots. Pilot as much as possible, as if you are an actual pilot. Look at what you're using now. If there are systems that go along with the dispensers you may have, and they're agnostic systems that can fit into any dispenser. Maybe that solution fits you depending on your facility. Try them all out, see what the reporting looks like, see what the notifications look like, and measure what it is about that technology that you'll find useful. Also, see if there's other use cases for that technology. We talk about restrooms and those dispensers, but you also have hand towel dispensers in your break rooms. They also have trash can dispensers that you can put in your restrooms to monitor how the trash levels. You may want to use that in other spaces depending on your facility. So see if the use case for some of these technologies can be stretched out and used in other areas of your facility as well, and if it makes sense to implement them. And once you do that, then you can see the cost. But I would say pilot and slow implementation and really getting the buy-in from your staff and making sure you have those support resources to help you make this successful. Because if you do a big rollout all at once, blanket, and don't see the pain points, it might not go so well and you'll have some of those hiccups.
Good points, Carl. Thank you. I want to comment on one of the chat comments here. Raymond says 18 schools and too many restrooms. I guess that fits well to your point, to do it slowly. If you're going to do it, roll it out across the facility. But 18 schools and all those restrooms, that would be quite the refitting of devices and accessories to do that. So
yeah, and maybe one of those agnostic solutions might be better, because I'm assuming if you have 18 different schools, you might have all different types of dispensers there that got put in over time as construction was happening, and different things are in different places. So that may be a solution, but a slow rollout, and start with where the pain is, right? Where does it hurt? What's your biggest pain point? Maybe we can try piloting here.
good points. Rosario, anything to add here?
Yeah, overall, I think that the Internet of Things implementation in public restrooms can lead to improved efficiency, reduced operational costs, better resource management, enhanced user satisfaction, providing a more hygienic and convenient restroom environment. And I know that on campus, we have people that drive for hours just to come to campus to get a look at it before they decide to throw their money at us. And the first thing they want to go to is the restroom. So you want to create that impression. I agree with Daryl when he says that when you walk into a restroom and you smell that cherry bomb, you're like, oh my God, what are they hiding here?
Good points. I never thought about that. With a school like yours, you do have to court potential students, right, and their families. So
Correct.
they drive all that way, they got to go to the bathroom.
And that's the first impression they get. Like somebody had mentioned earlier, you go to the bathroom. First, you come on the campus and you see how nice the grass is cut and the beautiful flowers. Then you go to the bathroom and like, what happened?
Excellent thought. Yeah, sobering in ways. Daryl, let's wrap up this slide with you. Any thoughts here?
You're on mute.
There you go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think the Internet of Things is going to be growing in the future, but in the meantime, we have to realize that how we use that data, and that it'd be showing maybe a green, yellow, red sort of if you got 18 restrooms or 18 schools with restrooms, then you want to know where the reds are, or the yellows that are warning that the batteries are getting low, and to be proactive. But I think that as Carl said, we're being inundated with data, but how do we manage that data? Who's watching it, and who is adjusting schedules that reflect the usage and the frequencies needed?
Mm-hmm. Good points. Got a few questions in our chat. We'll probably answer some of these towards the end of our webinar. Albert wants to know about training for large groups. Yeah, I think Daryl does some training, Carl as well. So Rosario, he has a full-time job at the school, but who knows? So you do want good training for your team. Let's get into our next sponsor message from Sofidel. amazing things happening with Sofidel and the recycling programs. Thank you for your sponsorship. Here's a chat question. We may get a little busy in the chat here because there's a lot of restroom pain points. Love to hear from all you attendees on what you deal with the most. We've already talked about many of these, but feel free to add your thoughts in the chat as to what are the big issues you face. Is it staffing? Is it odors? Is it floor cleaning, grout? Is it costs? Who knows? Lots of different pain points you might mention. So feminine products, Jeanette says, so yes, absolutely. There's all types of issues, and we're going to talk about some of these, especially in our Q&A at the end. So Kathleen is looking at these and she'll compile some nice questions from what you're putting in here as well. So thank you for that. And our panelists can see what you're saying. So we'll keep this in mind as we talk about the rest of our presentation. Let's talk about productivity and quality. And I'd love to hear some strategies from Carl, Rosario, and Daryl on how to boost productivity, but keep the quality. What are some strategies you would recommend or thoughts on that? And we're going to start with Rosario on this one. What do you do with your facility and what can you tell others, Rosario?
Wow. Well, we have over 50 buildings on campus that are each unique. I inherited an aging staff. So there's not who are set in their ways on how they do things. I have people who want to bring in their own chemicals because they smell better or because they just get used to knowing them. So changing the way that some of the custodial associates think and work in order to speed up productivity without, how can I say it? Without seeming, I guess, too bossy, because sometimes people, they've been there 10, 20, 30 years and they're set in the ways of this is how I do it, this is how I've always done it, and you're not going to change my mind. I don't know anything about computers, I don't know anything, I don't want to know it. So you try to make their job easier, you show them, you ask them for their input, and try to get a balance across, if that makes any sense.
It does. Good point. Yeah, there's all types of ages and skill sets involved with a large staff that you manage, and you have to consider all of that. I just have to mention Glenn's comment. Building occupants that get bored and peel the paint off the wall in the installs. I just had to read that out loud. Thank you, Glenn, for sharing that. Talking about pain points. So besides cleaning, you might have to do some repainting in some of these restrooms. All right, back on topic. Carl, let's go to you. What do you think about this productivity and quality issue?
I would say, as you look at it, to get the best of both is training your staff to have a good understanding of task and frequency. In whatever area you're working in, but in restrooms, it's, getting them out of the tunnel vision, right? I'm used to doing X, Y, and Z, and that equals my clean restroom. Exactly. Well, did you look up, right? Because I used to clean, and sometimes I get the same thing. If someone didn't tell me to look up, I would not hide dust sometimes. So it's really getting to them. You need to hide dust above the partitions once a week. You need to scrub those edges and corners weekly, even though you may be doing your mopping or you're running your little auto scrubber, or then you have to top scrub on a different frequency, a less frequency. But if you can get them to understand that task and frequency and systematically look at cleaning their areas that way, even the number of restrooms they have, right? You would deep clean or do a deeper clean in this restroom on Monday, next one Tuesday, next one Wednesday. You do all the basics every day, but you start segmenting how you clean. I think you can get a good balance of productivity and quality out of it. And then using all the technology and tools at your disposal and really getting them to buy into it, into helping them because again, it's there to help them, right? Whether it's using a touchless cleaner or when they're doing their rounding using sensors and all those data-driven features, they're really there to help clean the restroom.
Very good. And Daryl, what would you add?
A couple things is one is educating your staff, and education is different than training. And I believe that we educate two-legged animals, we train four-legged animals. And so we change our mindset to the why behind what they do. And so once they understand the why, then the how, and the green stuff goes on this and the blue stuff goes on that, is much easier once they connect the dots, that that really we're into infection prevention and providing safe, clean, disinfected spaces. But secondly to that would be the rounding and that we're visible. And I learned early on in my management career that it's managing by walking around and having eyes on things, so that when someone says this or that about a room or a space, then I was just there 10 minutes ago, so I'll circle back. But anyway, I think the visibility to your staff and to building occupants is essential, that they know who you are and that you're there to provide safe, clean areas.
Good points all. Thank you for that. Let's talk about inspections and monitoring, our next topic. I've been to restrooms and in restaurants and other places where they'll have a clipboard on a wall somewhere, and yeah, Daryl, you've seen them too, right?
Yeah.
Says it was clean 20 minutes ago and it's filthy. I don't believe them.
Well, and you have to think about who's doing the cleaning in a restaurant. It may be a student, a high school kid, and the trainee may not be there. And I've seen, some walk in, they mark on there, and then they walk out. And this dates back to, remember those days when you had the big roll of paper to dry your hands and it just kept going and going. Remember that? Yeah. So these clipboards have been around longer than that. Yep. What can we do to really ensure clean is happening when we think about inspections and monitoring and tracking? So that's the question here. And let's start with you, Rosario. Maybe you could talk about what you do with your team to make sure, when people come visit, you're confident when they walk into that restroom, they're not going to walk out and be disgusted.
So besides training, like a lot of us have already mentioned, I have a mantra that people will never do what you expect. They'll do what you inspect. If somebody's been used to cleaning a bathroom a certain way and nobody ever told them, hey, you're not doing it right, you didn't clean on top of the partition, you didn't check the HVAC vent in the restroom for not looking up. If you don't show them these things and tell them that they haven't done it and that it needs to be done, then they will never know. They'll say, yeah, I went in there, I cleaned the mirror, I filled all the dispensers, I swept that mop, it's clean, it's beautiful. I put a new air freshener in the corner. No, you have to show them. You have to inspect. You have to make yourself visible, like Darryl said. You have to, training and inspecting. I think it all boils down to that. You have to, a manager or a supervisor needs to go around and needs to say, okay, this is done right, this is done right. And you got to give kudos just as much as you give complaints. In housekeeping, sometimes you don't want to open email because it's complaints. And when you get that one kudos, you're like, wow, you want to share with everybody. Hey, look, you got kudos from a parent who came to drop off their daughter.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned putting an air freshener in the corner. Just don't make it cherry.
Yeah, no,
Daryl will call you out. He'll call you out.
I'm not a big fan of air fresheners, especially when they put them wrong. A lot of air fresheners go right by the door so that when you open the door, the air from the door hits the air freshener and it emits a nice pleasant scent. But when you have it all the way in the back corner where it's not working, you're just spending money.
I was going to say, I was just traveling last couple of days and I was at a hotel and they put an air freshener in the elevator. So I'm sitting in the elevator going up and I get sprayed. Why would you do that?
You got sprayed?
I got sprayed. Yeah. I got sprayed cherry, by the way, Daryl.
It was cherry?
Yes, it was cherry. Yes.
Can you tell Daryl the hotel so he can follow up on that?
I'll send you a
Text
private
him.
message. But yes, I get sprayed in the elevator. I was like, wow, this is not the proper application of this. But
that's interesting. Yeah.
But I would
Okay.
add in a little bit,
Go ahead.
to what Rosario and Daryl were saying, and I had when I was running a site, I had a cleaner working for me named Rosie. She did a great job. Restrooms looked perfect. And but the louvers on the door were dusty. And I said, Rosie, the louvers are dusty. And she said, Carl, what's a louver? I walk her over and because again, you get tunnel vision. You're doing the same thing and you just didn't think about whatever X, Y, or Z was. And that's important. What I would also say about these lists, and I had audited a facility a couple of months ago, back in March, and I think it was like the 15th. I look at the back of the list on the restroom door, and I see checked off March 22nd, March 28th. I'm like, what are they marking off the future of what they're cleaning, right? I look at the bottom, 2022. If you're going to use whatever system, whether it's a QR code, the list on the back of the door, follow it, update it properly. And if you're not, take it off. Because all you're doing is having this negative perception that the last time you may have serviced that restroom was March of 2022. Now, I know it was serviced sometime between March of 22 and March of 23, but you have this list and it just looks like you don't care. So I think, again, whatever systems you implement, even when we talk about IoT or whatever it is, make sure you're following through and implementing them and using them properly. If you're not, then don't go down that road. And again, that's why I always say pilot, 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 pilot.
Mhm. Good points. And poor Rosie.
Yeah, she got it though. It was perfect after that.
Well, if we're talking about terminology, I remember when I first got my start in the cleaning industry, a couch or a sofa I understood, but someone asked me about a Davenport, and I was young and had like, what's a Davenport?
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of people on this webinar don't know what a Davenport is. So.
I know it's a nice town in Florida.
Oh, yeah. Good one, Rosario. Daryl, any additional thoughts here?
I would, as far as monitoring, I believe that ATP is a tool that is still trying to gain a foothold, but I think that marking with the fluorescent markers and using black light to inspect, don't just make a mark, but maybe write a date on there so that that this is today's date, and you follow up after the process has been done in that restroom, and then you check the marks. And if there are surfaces that didn't get cleaned, because these marks are fairly easily removed with the right cleaner and the right effort. But anyway, those are the things that I think will help to, as Rosario said, to inspect what you expect.
Okay, thank you. Well, we need to move on. We are going to run out of time if we don't. This topic, indoor air quality, I think we all agree that setting off a cherry bomb or spraying Carl with a cherry scent doesn't improve air quality. It may hide some stuff, but no one's fooled. We agree with that?
Mhm.
All right. So what are some practical tips you can share on removing malodors from restrooms? Besides, I know we talked about get it clean and have frequency of cleaning, increase that. But any other things come to mind?
Proper
Ventilation or-
ventilation. Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Talk about that.
Proper ventilation in the restrooms. Make sure the HVAC is working. Make sure, just seeing that it has a lot of dust means it pulls dust out of the air, but if you're not cleaning it, if it's not working properly, you're going to get smells in there. Try to minimize the amounts of detergents and disinfectants that you use as well, because those also create an odor, especially if the ventilation is bad. For indoor air quality, if you have urine smells, if you have any other type of smells, look at places where normal cleaning is not done, under the sink, behind the pipes, behind the toilet commode, behind the door where nobody usually checks. They open the door to clean it, they prop the housekeeping cart in front of the door, go in the bathroom, clean it, but they never look behind the door. So, looking for the odor, not just trying to mask it. I know there was a somewhere I read about the waterless urinals. I think that's a whole other webinar.
I hear you. It's an issue. You start inspecting properly, you see things that shouldn't be there. Yeah. Daryl, anything on this?
I think urine odors are the strongest things in restrooms. And if you look underneath the urinals and you see the dark grout, first of all, if you've got input into designing or building out restrooms, go with the color grout that it's going to wind up being, not white, because then you're chasing your tail the rest of your life trying to get it back to white again. but you have to live with what you have. But most odors are, especially urine odors, are going to be in the grout, and we have to do a better job. If the floor tiles are glazed ceramic, they're going to be hard, non-porous surfaces, but that grout is very porous, and stuff gets down in them, and we have to have a way of getting it out. And so I'm a proponent of, when Rosario said, look for the non-obvious things, I used like a cosmetic mirror, and I would look underneath the rim of the toilet, because there is where a lot of your odors can be, because the process of removing those the brown stains up under where the water comes out, you could have hard water stains, but also that's a lot of decaying bacteria that's under that rim. Same way with your urinals. Use that compact mirror, look around the inside of the rim, and get at that buildup of bacteria. And the last one would be the floor drains. That you have to have a process of treating those. My housekeepers would pour once a week, pour water down those floor drains, because if they get dry, then that P-trap gets dry, then you get sewer odors in the restroom. So keeping those floor drains with water in the P-trap will help with some of those odors. But the last one that I really like is the airports where there are no doors on the restrooms. I think that would improve the air circulation, people not having to grab a door with after they've washed their hands. If we can, to remove doors on restrooms and make it the traffic going in and out a lot easier, and improving the air circulation in those restrooms will improve those odors.
I've seen in some of these, like in an airport, where they'll put an air mover in, like the type you use for water damage work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's moving the air from the floor, from behind toilets, up into the breathing space. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to dry the floor. I just have to wonder, what's that really doing? So.
Just blowing it around.
Yeah.
Or the fomites.
Yeah, they're up in the air, aren't they? That may be a whole nother topic. I tell you what, Martha, let's end our slides. I think we're near the end anyway, and get into our Q&A, because we have 15 more minutes. So let's just go ahead and get into these different questions you've asked. We have a lot of questions presented in the Q&A and on the chat, and Kathleen's been compiling those for us. So let's go through a few of those. You guys ready for this?
Ready.
No, there's no prep work on this. So our first one from Kathleen, from one of our attendees, is what do you see as the best way to build buy-in and educate employees who aren't as tech savvy as IoT companies might want? I think this fits into Rosario's thoughts earlier about an aging staff maybe, but.
You just got to train them. Sometimes you got to grab them by the hand and show them exactly what they need to do, walk them through it, have them repeat back to you what you thought they heard, but you want to make sure that what they heard is actually what you said. That's key. Take the iPad, take the iPhone, the Google phone, or whatever, and show them. Okay, you log in. You scan the barcode. You're in the XYZ building in bathroom number 6. It's 9 a.m. You have to show them step by step. And then once you show them, you have them show you now, so that you are clear that they understand the direction. And then just shadow them for a couple of bathrooms, or maybe come back a day or two later and see where they're at, to make sure that they're sticking with it, and they're not just doing it because you as the manager or the supervisor, the client, is standing there shadowing them. You want to make sure that they are following that consistently.
Okay, good points. A lot of what you talked about is education, right? Showing them how to do it, taking them along. The question also asks, how do you get them to buy into it? That's more attitude maybe, or more than education?
And I guess it kind of shows, or you want to show them that it's a better way of cleaning, more efficient and less time consuming. although they might have a routine, again, like if they've been there X amount of years and they have a routine where they come in, they pull the trash, they fill the dispensers, they spray everything down, they hose it down, they squeeze into the floor drain and go. No, there are other steps you got to take.
Okay. Carl, I know you want to talk about this.
I would say, a couple things you can do that might help is looking at the solution, whatever the solution is. If there's parts of it that you can implement that they don't have to be so heavily involved, for example, making data-driven decisions. Well, we're going to alter your schedule because we know this is happening. You'll still do the same things, but we're just moving things for you at a different time. That's fine. So there's some decisions you can make without changing some of their routines. I would start with those, and then as you implement, start with very simple. Sometimes when I do audits, I may find 20 things that aren't right in the space. What's the top 3? Let's address these first and then move on to the next 3. Same thing when you implement a solution. Let's do these 3 things. We're going to do X, Y, and Z here, but I want you to just focus on these 3 things first. Then as you build those successes, you keep going.
Good points. Daryl?
I would say that, make sure that you have balanced workloads, and so that, you can't get the, unless you have the data that we're talking about of scanning in and scanning out when you're done, then, I think that, people will perceive whether it's true or not. But, you usually hear it from your relief workers, I don't like doing that schedule because she doesn't do this, doesn't do that. And, so, you get from your relief workers, but you have to have balanced work schedules so that there's 8 hours of work for people, and because the other perception is some sort of favoritism or whatever. But those kinds of things are, in the employee's mind. And so, make sure that you have balanced workloads.
Thank you. Let's look at another question we got from one of our attendees. What are the main differences or challenges between cleaning men's and women's restrooms?
It's the feminine care products, really, because they're both, you have the feminine care disposals that you should have bags in so that you're not touching them. You should have gloves. A big problem that we have at the university is people flushing them down the drain, the women feminine products. So we partnered with a company. I don't know if I'm allowed to say their name, but they specialize in these products where they wrap these things and they just toss them as opposed to flushing them down the drain. During COVID-19, we went crazy, first just trying to source wipes. Once we finally got them and put them in all the dorm rooms, lounges, kitchens, classrooms, they ended up going out into the bathroom drains. And now we have floods and sewage backed up all over the place because of the wipes.
Do you find it takes longer to clean a men's room or a women's room?
Well, that's a great question. I think now, for me, because I haven't been cleaning in a long time, except my own house, the staff, it all depends. In the men's room, you have more urinals than you do commodes, and in the ladies' room, you have more commodes and no urinals, and you have bigger sinks, and the line is always longer in the ladies' room than it is in the men's room. So
careful, Rosario, careful.
Yeah, that's.
But what I would say is, besides the commodes, you have more partitions, more higher partitions. So there's more partitions to clean in the women's room and dust and make sure you're wiping those down. So, and also it tends to be that in the women's room where you have the baby changing stations, they get used more than in the ones in the men's room, I would say.
We have some comments happening in our chat. People are saying men's room, more fixtures, men's. So that's a question we hadn't even considered, but good points. Maybe we need a study on this. Daryl, you do the study for us.
I would throw in, I used to work at a couple of Major League Baseball stadiums. And so, men's rooms on there would be, took much longer than the women's room.
Sure. Daryl, we'll commission you to find the answer.
Well, it was when I was inspecting a women's restroom, at a hospital, and I saw these, like the toilet seat had these little dimples on it, on the sides, and I went and got my secretary and said, come here and explain to me what I'm seeing here. What causes this? Because it makes it harder to really clean. And she said, it's women standing on the toilet seat and doing their business. And so they hover instead of sitting, because their perception is the toilet seat is dirty.
Mhm.
And so that was an education for me. But not only men but women may do those things. But people think that they get diseases from toilet seats, and that's just not true. But the perception is that toilet seats, no one, and I don't like the idea of seat covers, because I find those half in, half out of the toilet. They're on the floor, they're everywhere, and your mom usually taught you how to put toilet paper on the toilet seat.
Yeah. A couple of comments that said this may not be a good question, but I think if you know how long things take, then you can staff it appropriately when we think about productivity and how long something should take. But interesting topic. Here's a question. How do you treat or control grout efflorescence from spreading over the entire floor? A technical question. So
Read that again.
The efflorescence from grout. How do you keep it from spreading onto the tile? Is that a question we want to cover today? Speaking of the white residue. Okay, let's move on to another one. So we'll have to get to that offline, but when we think about what that is, it's the white residue that can come up. And so obviously this is an issue in some facilities.
Yeah, vinegar, somebody posted. Vinegar is good. Also some enzymes in your cleaning solution for the bathroom. There's also chemicals where you can seal the grout, where anything that falls onto it, whether it's urine or dirt or anything else, is on top of the seal. So when you come through with your mop or your deck brush or whatever, it just comes right off.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how bad the efflorescence is, that might be an issue of the install itself, right? If there's some sort of moisture getting below whatever that stone is, if it's granite or whatever it is, that just might be something that you may not be able to deal with.
Good thoughts. And there's some comments from our attendees with some solutions as well. Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, he's a senior director of GBAC. He says, don't forget about the toilet sneeze when you flush without a lid on the toilet. So that's a whole nother issue. And I know we've done some video on that. Gavin and I have done, because that's an issue. A lot of commercial facilities don't have those lids.
During COVID, it became a big thing. Sorry, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, during COVID, that became a big thing across, these public bathrooms and areas where you had to have a lid on it.
Let's talk about menstrual care products. It was mentioned how, Rosario, you talked about sometimes they're flush and they cause plumbing issues. What about availability of the products in both men's and women's room? Is that something that's crossed our radars?
Yeah, we have them on campus in the academic buildings and admin buildings. We don't necessarily have them in the dorm rooms, because the people who need the people who need them will have them in their room. It's just sometimes when it's an emergency or something that you didn't plan to happen. So we have them. I know that there is something coming out. I don't know if this is countrywide. I know here we're going through where we have to provide them at no charge, the feminine products. So that's something that's coming down, and we provide it. I believe ISSA has a whole period poverty thing going on also.
Yes, it's an entire advocacy movement to level the playing field, make products available of all types to everybody.
One of the things I would say is, you need to be aware of what goes on inside that toilet stall, because I know that adult diapers are a thing now. You walk down the aisles of the store and there are as many adult products as there are baby products and women hygiene products that could potentially be flushed down that toilet. And I've seen, on the back of the stall door where it says, do not flush these things. And, some people would read that list and say, well, they don't have pencils on there, can I flush a pencil? It's people that are anal thinking, but anyway, there are a number of things that may go on in that stall that don't need to be flushed down the toilet. But I've seen the clogged sewers caused by, like Rosario said, those feminine hygiene products, and in a hospital there was washcloths, flushed down the toilets. And, so a lot of things that get flushed down the toilets that really cause a lot of major damage. I mean, we had to jackhammer up a floor, and it costs tens of thousands of dollars, to jackhammer a floor that was clogged by things like we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question, and I think, Carl, we could go to you. We didn't get you on that last one. Does anyone have men cleaning women's restrooms when the restrooms are occupied, and vice versa? So thinking about that issue, the gender of the cleaning crew going into a restroom that's not theirs. How do you handle that? Do you close them?
Well, no, you don't want to close the restroom itself with someone in there while you're cleaning, right? Because you want to make sure you have proper ventilation. So they would cordon it off. They have the blockades that they come with. There's all different types of ones that go in there. Obviously, they have to be aware of their etiquette when coming into the restroom. And if someone runs in there while they're servicing the restroom, they need to leave. But regardless of what the person says, right? I'm going to be real quick, or it doesn't matter. I don't care that you're here. You have to, and again, that goes back to what we've been talking about in terms of educating staff. Part of the restroom cleaning etiquette in general has to be talking about how you clean it, when you clean it, how you block it off, how you cordon off. Even when you're doing your deep cleaning at night, if there's some occupant who just happens to be there late, so it goes all back to etiquette and education and training.
Mm-hmm. Good points. We do have a lot of questions we're not going to be able to get to, and I know there's some of you that want to talk to our panelists. All three of you are available on LinkedIn, I believe.
Yes.
Yep.
So easy to find, and I can connect anyone with any of these panelists as well. And my email is jeffcross@issa.com. So anyone, once our webinar ends, wants to reach out to our panelists and continue discussions, that's what they're here for. One more question. And this is a tough one. This is one I've asked people. I've talked to HR directors in big corporations. What are you going to do about this? The future of non-gender restrooms. As the world moves forward and we see issues, and you know what I'm talking about, which restroom am I going to go in? And everyone has to be comfortable. What is going to come out of this? What is the solution? I know I've traveled in some countries where you don't have a gender restroom. You have a single occupant type restroom or stall. So who wants to handle this?
I would start by just saying, as new construction comes out, you can see what restrooms are turning into in terms of single occupancy, single usage, larger partitions. Going back to, again, education, training, and etiquette, that's going to be part of what goes into that, is making sure our staff understands that, right, as they go out to service these areas. I would say I've seen quite a bit of new construction that incorporates gender neutral more so, and I've seen a lot of retrofitting in buildings. And so I think there's just going to be more of it as we go along rather than less.
And at an expense that has to be considered as well.
Correct, because again, when you put in these larger partitions, that is also more area that has to be cleaned and whatnot, and there's a lot of logistics to that as well. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon the pun, but this, I don't think, should be a binary choice. I believe that the third choice would be the family restrooms that I've seen, that people have a choice, to go in there and be able to lock the door and, without being offended by someone walking in that they don't agree with, their gender identity. But I think that should be a third option, is something that you don't have to call it, you can just call it a neutral zone or whatever, and that people will have that option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the transition to non-gender restrooms, face challenges and resistance for some individuals or groups who are not familiar with or supportive of gender diversity. There still needs to be some type of public education campaign of some sort that can help address the concerns and dispel some of the misconceptions of these non-gender bathrooms. I know that someone had mentioned about the baby changing stations being in the ladies' room. On campus, we have them in all the men's room, even in the stadium. Men are also now walking with their kids, and they're changing them and they're using them. We don't have any adult diapers dispensers yet, though, Daryl. I'm hoping we don't have to buy any of those.
That's next.
I would just make a point, at one point I managed a transit site, and we had a larger homeless population using our restrooms, and sometimes staff would say comments to me, and I'd say, those are our customers. Those are their customers. They're coming to use our restroom. I don't care who you are. That's our customer. When we have to service our area, just like everyone else.
Mhm. Good points. And challenges are going to be here for a while. And once you figure it all out, there's going to be something new, right? Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you. Daryl, did you have more to add?
No, I said it just keeps it interesting.
It does. It does. But Carl, Rosario, Daryl, thank you for your time today. We've gone over. Thank you all who stuck with us. More than 100 of you have gone past the hour with us. So thank you. And again, anyone who wants to talk to these three gentlemen, LinkedIn is a good way to find them. And I can connect you as well because I know who they are and I have all their information. So
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Carl.
See you next
Thank
time.
you, everyone. No cherry bomb.
No.